My boss made me come to work while I was actively miscarrying, and I lost my baby on her office bathroom floor, then nearly died. 2 years later, I watched her accept the Women's Empowerment Leader Award until I stood up and told 500 people how she let me bleed out during her presentation. That's when 7 other women started standing too. I was bleeding through my 3rd pad in an hour when Agatha Geraldine texted me, "I don't care if you're bleeding out. Meeting starts in 20. I texted back from the office bathroom floor, "I'm literally miscarrying. I'm going hospital now." Her response came in seconds. "The presentation is in 2 hours. I need you here." 2 years later, I watched the same woman accept the Women's Empowerment Leader Award at the Hyatt Ballroom. 500 people applauded as she talked about supporting working mothers and paid maternity leave. My husband held my hand as she said no woman should choose between her baby and her career. I'd been her executive assistant at Geraldine Marketing, making $65,000 with promises of promotion. After 3 miscarriages, this pregnancy was high risk. When the bleeding started that morning, my doctor said come immediately. Any delay could be dangerous. But we just landed the Jameson Industries account worth $50 million. Agatha's entire year depended on this presentation. When I called her crying about the bleeding, she reminded me that my performance review was next month. She mentioned how many people wanted my job. She said team players show up when it matters. "Can't you just come in for the presentation?" she'd asked. "It's only 2 hours." So I went. I set up the conference room while cramping so bad I could barely stand. I smiled at clients while blood soaked through my skirt. I took notes while my baby died inside me. At 9:30 a.m., I excused myself to the bathroom. That's where I lost my daughter. Alone on the cold tile floor while Agatha pitched marketing strategies down the hall. I tried to call for help, but no sound came out. The pain was beyond words. Maria, the cleaning lady, found me unconscious at 10:15 in a pool of blood. She screamed so loud that everyone came running, including Agatha and the Jameson executives. They all saw me there, dying on the bathroom floor in my work clothes. I woke up in the ICU 2 days later. The doctors said I'd lost 40% of my blood. My uterus had ruptured. If Maria had found me 10 minutes later, I'd be dead. They did an emergency hysterectomy to save my life. At 29, I'll never have children. Agatha visited once. She brought cheap flowers and a team card. She never apologized, never asked about the baby, just reminded me to get a doctor's note and asked when I'd be back. She stood there for 5 minutes checking her phone. I quit when I could walk again. No lawyer would take my case against Geraldine Marketing's legal team, so I stayed quiet and kept everything. The text messages, Maria's incident report, the hospital records showing I almost died, the security footage my husband's IT friends saved before they deleted it. Now Agatha stood on stage bragging about her new maternity leave program. She actually said she understood what working mothers go through. She claimed she'd never seen a woman suffer in silence at her company. That's when I stood up. "I have a question about suffering in silence," I said. The room turned. Agatha froze when she recognized me. "2 years ago, I miscarried my daughter in your office bathroom because you wouldn't let me go to the hospital. I almost died on that floor while you finished your presentation." Silence. Someone dropped a glass. Agatha gripped the podium. "Maria found me unconscious in a pool of blood," I continued, pulling out my phone. "I have her incident report, the hospital records, the texts where you ordered me to come in while I was bleeding, even the security footage of them carrying me out on a stretcher while you kept presenting." Her face went white. The woman next to her, wearing a Women's Leadership Council badge, stepped away from her. "I can never have children because I stayed for your meeting," I said. "My daughter died on your bathroom floor, and you asked me for a doctor's note." The screens behind her still showed her presentation slide, supporting women through every stage of life. Someone in the audience laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Agatha tried to speak, but nothing came out. Her CMO was already on his phone, probably calling legal. 2 board members walked out. The event coordinator was frantically whispering to security. "I have one more question," I said as security approached. "How many other women bled in your bathrooms while you gave presentations? Because I found 7 so far." The room erupted. Women were standing up, some crying, some shouting. Agatha tried to run, but found herself surrounded by the very women she'd claimed to empower. That's when I knew this was far from over. Those 7 women, they were all here tonight. And unlike 2 years ago, we weren't alone anymore. The security guards reached me just as more women started standing. One grabbed my elbow, but I pulled away and held up my phone higher. The screen showed Agatha's text messages in bold letters, and several people were already recording. "Ma'am, we need you to leave," the guard said, but his voice lacked conviction. Behind him, the event coordinator was gesturing frantically while talking on her headset. I stepped into the aisle, moving toward the stage where Agatha stood frozen. The 7 women I'd mentioned were already pushing through the crowd, their faces set with determination. One of them, Catherine, reached me first. She'd been Agatha's marketing coordinator 3 years ago. "Show them the texts," Catherine urged, pulling out her own phone. "I have mine too." The security guards hesitated as more women joined us in the aisle. The murmuring in the ballroom grew louder. Board members were leaving their tables, some heading for exits, while others moved closer to see what was happening. Agatha finally found her voice. She leaned into the microphone, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Like you discussed my miscarriage privately?" I shot back. "When you deleted the security footage?" The CMO had reached the stage now, whispering urgently in Agatha's ear. She nodded and tried again, her voice shaking slightly. "These are very serious allegations that need proper investigation. This isn't the appropriate forum." "You're right," I said, holding up a manila folder I'd kept in my purse for 2 years. "That's why I brought copies of everything for the board members who are here tonight." More gasps rippled through the room. The Women's Leadership Council president who'd been standing near Agatha was now backing away, her face pale. Several reporters who'd been covering the event had pushed to the front, cameras rolling. Catherine stepped forward. "I lost my baby too. She made me fly to Chicago for a client meeting when I was bleeding. Said I'd lose my job if I didn't go." Another woman, Roberta, spoke up from across the room. She denied my pregnancy accommodation request. Said morning sickness wasn't a real medical condition. "I had preeclampsia," a voice called from the back. She said I was being dramatic. The security guards had stopped trying trying to escort us out. They stood awkwardly between us and the stage, clearly unsure what to do as more women shared their stories. The event coordinator was on multiple phone calls now, her face flushed. Agatha gripped the podium tighter, her knuckles white. These are all mischaracterizations. I've always supported my employees. We have excellent maternity policies. Policies you created after I almost died, I said, after you realized you might face consequences. The CMO grabbed the microphone. Due to unexpected circumstances, we'll be concluding tonight's ceremony early. Thank you all for coming. But nobody moved to leave. The energy in the room had shifted completely. Women were exchanging phone numbers, comparing experiences, showing each other saved emails and texts. The board members who'd stayed were huddled in intense discussion near the exit. Agatha tried to leave the stage, but found her path blocked by the very women she'd honored earlier that evening. The Women's Empowerment Leader Award sat abandoned on the podium, its gold plating catching the light. We're not done, Catherine said firmly. We've been silent for too long. I felt my phone buzz. My husband was texting from his seat, asking if I was okay. I glanced over and saw him standing now, ready to intervene if needed, but I didn't need saving this time. The hotel's general manager had appeared, looking deeply uncomfortable as he surveyed the chaos. Several security guards were now positioned around the room, but they seemed more interested in crowd control than removing anyone. Agatha's assistant, a young woman I didn't recognize, approached the stage with a tablet. She whispered something to Agatha, whose face went even paler. The assistant then did something unexpected. She walked over to our group. I have 3 years of emails, she said quietly. Every time she made pregnant employees work overtime, every denied accommodation, every threat about performance reviews during maternity leave. The room erupted again. Agatha stumbled backward, catching herself on the podium. The CMO was practically dragging her toward the side exit now, but photographers were already there, cameras flashing. This is slander, Agatha finally managed to shout. I'll sue every one of you. With what evidence? I called back. The footage you deleted, the emails you thought we didn't save, the incident reports you buried. Catherine held up a thick folder. We have everything. Every text, every email, every witness statement. We've been collecting evidence for months. The board members were leaving now, but one stopped at our group. She handed Catherine a business card. My office, Monday morning, all of you. As security finally began ushering people out of the ballroom, I caught sight of Agatha being hustled through a service exit by the CMO and 2 other executives. Her perfect composure had completely shattered. Mascara ran down her cheeks, and her designer dress was wrinkled from gripping the podium so tightly. What's really going on with Agatha's sudden shift from demanding texts to accepting awards for supporting mothers? The timing of her new maternity policies right after someone almost died in her bathroom seems awfully convenient. The 7 women surrounded me as we slowly made our way out. We'd planned to confront her, but we hadn't expected this response. The entire room had turned against her in minutes. She's going to come after us, Roberta warned as we reached the lobby. She's vindictive. Let her try, Catherine said. We're not alone anymore. My husband met us in the lobby, wrapping his arm around me. You okay? I nodded, still shaking from adrenaline. Better than okay. The women exchanged contact information, making plans to meet tomorrow. As we talked, I noticed several other women approaching us, employees from Geraldine Marketing I didn't recognize, but who'd clearly been affected too. I never thought anyone would speak up, one said. I've been carrying this guilt for years. We stayed in that lobby for another hour as more women shared their stories. Each one was different but followed the same pattern. Pregnancy complications dismissed, medical needs ignored, threats about job security. Agatha had built her empire on the suffering of the very women she claimed to champion. By the time we finally left, our group had grown to nearly 20 women. The hotel staff watched nervously as we gathered contact information and made plans. The story was already spreading on social media. Videos from inside the ballroom were going viral. As my husband drove us home, I stared at my phone. Messages were pouring in from former colleagues, reporters, and strangers who'd seen the videos. But one message stood out, a text from an unknown number. You've made a terrible mistake. This isn't over. I showed it to my husband, who immediately screenshotted it. She's panicking, he said. Good, but I knew Agatha too well. She didn't just panic, she retaliated. And with her career and reputation crumbling, she'd be more dangerous than ever. The next morning, I woke to 57 missed calls. My husband was already up, laptop open, scrolling through news sites. The story had exploded overnight. Women's Empowerment Leader exposed by former employee, read one headline. Another showed a photo of Agatha fleeing the ballroom with 7 victims come forward, in bold letters. Catherine called while I was making coffee. She's already started. My former supervisor just called, said Agatha's been calling everyone, claiming we're lying. She's threatening to sue for defamation. Let her, I said. We have proof. That's not all. She's calling our current employers. Roberta might lose her job. My stomach dropped. This was exactly what I'd feared. Agatha had connections everywhere in our industry. She could make our lives miserable without ever stepping into a courtroom. Within hours, the full extent of her retaliation became clear. 3 women received calls from their current bosses about concerning allegations from their former employer. 2 had job offers suddenly rescinded. 1 found her professional social media accounts flooded with anonymous harassment. But we'd anticipated this. Catherine had connected us with a labor attorney who'd been investigating Geraldine Marketing for years. She met with us that afternoon in a conference room downtown, reviewing our evidence with growing excitement. This is extensive, she said, flipping through Maria's incident report. And you have the original security footage? I nodded. My husband's friend saved it before they wiped the servers. Agatha doesn't know that, Catherine added. She thinks it's gone forever. The attorney smiled. Perfect. Let her keep denying it exists. We spent the next 3 days building our case. More women came forward, not just from Geraldine Marketing, but from Agatha's previous companies. The pattern went back 15 years. She'd built her entire career on exploiting pregnant employees, forcing them to choose between their health and their jobs. Meanwhile, Agatha's attempts at damage control grew increasingly desperate. She posted a lengthy statement on the company website denying all allegations. She hired a PR firm to flood social media with positive stories about her her leadership. She even staged a photo op with current pregnant employees, though several later told us they'd been threatened into participating. The turning point came when Maria agreed to speak publicly. The cleaning lady who'd saved my life had been too frightened to come forward initially. She needed her job, and Geraldine Marketing was a major client for her cleaning company. But when she saw the other women standing up, she found her courage. Her interview with a local news station was devastating. She described finding me unconscious, the amount of blood, my gray face. She talked about writing the incident report that Agatha had tried to bury. Most damning, she revealed that she'd been told to clean the bathroom and never speak of it again. I couldn't sleep for months, Maria said on camera. I kept thinking about that poor girl, almost dying while her boss gave a presentation down the hall. The interview aired Thursday night. By Friday morning, Geraldine Marketing's biggest clients were pulling their contracts. The board called an emergency meeting. Employees were posting their own stories on social media, describing the toxic culture Agatha had created, but Agatha wasn't finished. That Friday afternoon, I received a certified letter from her attorney. She was suing me for defamation, demanding $2 million in damages. The other women received similar letters within hours. She's trying to scare us into silence, the attorney said when we called her. It's a classic intimidation tactic. That evening, something unexpected happened. The assistant who'd approached us at the award ceremony called Catherine. She was still at the office, and Agatha was there too, shredding documents. She's destroying evidence, the assistant whispered. Years of emails, performance reviews, everything. Catherine immediately called our attorney while I contacted the other women. Within an hour, we'd organized a plan. The assistant would document everything she could while we prepared to act. The assistant's frantic call set everything in motion. Catherine immediately contacted our attorney while I reached out to the other women through our group chat. Within minutes, we had a plan forming. The assistant would stay late, documenting what she could without arousing suspicion. My husband drove me to Catherine's apartment, where 6 of the other women had already gathered. Roberta arrived last, her face drawn with worry. Her boss had given her an ultimatum that afternoon: stop participating in any action against Agatha or lose her job. She'd chosen us. Catherine spread out the evidence we'd collected across her dining table: text messages, emails, medical records, incident reports. The assistant texted updates every few minutes. Agatha was methodically going through filing cabinets, feeding documents into the industrial shredder, years of evidence disappearing into ribbons of paper. The attorney arrived within the hour, bringing a colleague who specialized in employment law. They reviewed our materials while we waited anxiously for more updates from inside Geraldine Marketing. The assistant managed to photograph several documents before Agatha destroyed them, including performance reviews where she'd docked pay from women who'd taken sick days for pregnancy complications. Around midnight, the assistant texted that Agatha had left. She'd filled 6 garbage bags with shredded documents and taken them with her. But in her haste, she'd left her computer logged in. The assistant had access to her email account for the next few minutes before the system auto-locked. Catherine's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard as the assistant forwarded crucial emails. Correspondence with HR about problem employees who were all pregnant. Messages to clients apologizing for staffing issues when women were hospitalized. Most damning, an email thread with the IT department about deleting security footage from the day I'd nearly died. The system locked the assistant out after 12 minutes, but she'd managed to forward over 100 emails. Combined with what we already had, the evidence was overwhelming. The attorney said we had enough to file a complaint with the labor board, though she warned us Agatha would fight viciously. The next morning brought a new crisis. 3 more women from our group received threatening letters from Agatha's attorney. But worse, Catherine's landlord called to say she'd received a complaint about illegal business activities in her apartment. Someone had reported our gathering the night before. Agatha was watching us. The realization sent chills through our group. We started meeting in different locations, careful about digital communications. The assistant who'd helped us was transferred to a different department Monday morning, her access to executive files revoked. Tuesday afternoon, I was grocery shopping when I noticed the same woman in 3 different aisles. She pretended to study products, but kept glancing my way. When I confronted her, she hurried away, but not before I recognized her. She worked in Agatha's PR firm. The harassment escalated quickly. Roberta's new employer received anonymous complaints about her work ethic. Catherine's professional references were contacted by someone claiming to verify her employment history, but asking probing questions about her character. 2 women found their LinkedIn profiles flooded with connection requests from fake accounts. But we weren't backing down. Maria's interview had opened floodgates. More women reached out daily with their own stories about Agatha. A former CFO revealed she'd been demoted after announcing her pregnancy. A marketing director shared emails where Agatha questioned her commitment while she was on bed rest. Wednesday brought the first real victory. The board member who'd given Catherine her card followed through. The assistant secretly forwarding emails while Agatha shreds documents makes me wonder if this is really how a boss covers their tracks. Seems odd that someone so careful would leave their computer logged in right when they're destroying evidence. She scheduled a formal meeting with all of us for the following Monday. The company was taking our allegations seriously, despite Agatha's attempts to discredit us. Agatha's response was swift and vicious. Thursday morning, Catherine found her car tires slashed. That afternoon, I received a package at home, baby clothes with a note that said, "Since you'll never need these." My husband installed security cameras that night. The PR firm intensified their campaign. Positive articles about Agatha appeared on industry blogs, highlighting her charitable work and mentorship programs. They organized a rally of supporters outside Geraldine Marketing, though several participants later admitted they'd been paid to attend. Friday brought unexpected allies. The Jameson Industries executives who'd witnessed my collapse reached out through our attorney. They'd been horrified by what they'd seen and had documented everything in their own reports. They were willing to provide statements about Agatha continuing her presentation while I lay dying. The weekend was a blur of preparation. We organized our evidence, prepared statements, and coached each other for Monday's board meeting. The assistant who'd helped us risked her job again, revealing that Agatha had hired a crisis management firm and was planning her own counter-presentation to the board. Sunday night, Agatha made her biggest mistake. She sent emails to all current Geraldine marketing employees, warning them against speaking to us. She threatened termination for anyone who participated in this orchestrated attack on the company, but she'd miscalculated. Several pregnant employees forwarded the email to us, furious at the implied threat. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling. We met at a coffee shop near Geraldine Marketing's headquarters, 23 women strong now. Catherine had prepared folders for each board member with our evidence organized chronologically. My hands shook as I reviewed my statement one last time. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the executive conference room. We arrived early, filing through security with our attorney leading the way. Agatha was already there, flanked by 3 lawyers and her crisis management team. She'd worn her most conservative suit, her hair pulled back severely. She didn't look at any of us. The board consisted of 7 members, including the woman who'd invited us. They sat at one end of the long conference table while we crowded in at the other. Agatha's team positioned themselves along the wall, tablets and folders at the ready. The board chair, an older man with kind eyes, opened the meeting by acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations. He assured us they'd conducted their own preliminary investigation over the weekend. Several employees had come forward independently, he said, glancing at Agatha. We presented our evidence methodically. Catherine led off with the documented pattern of discrimination. She showed emails, text messages, and performance reviews that revealed systematic bias against pregnant employees. The board members took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. I spoke about my own experience, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I described the bleeding, the pain, the choice Agatha forced me to make. I showed them the text messages, the medical records, the security footage my husband's friend had saved. When I described losing my daughter alone on the bathroom floor, one board member wiped her eyes. Roberta detailed being forced to fly while experiencing complications. Another woman described being denied work-from-home accommodations during severe morning sickness. Each story built on the last, painting a picture of systematic cruelty disguised as dedication to the company. Maria's recorded interview played on the conference room screen. Her voice filled the room as she described finding me, the blood, my gray face. She talked about being told to clean up and never speak of it. The board members shifted uncomfortably as she described her months of nightmares. Agatha's team tried to interrupt several times, claiming the evidence was taken out of context or fabricated, but the board chair silenced them, saying they'd have their opportunity to respond. Agatha herself remained silent, her face a mask of controlled fury. The Jameson Industries statement was particularly damaging. The executives described Agatha's behavior that day in detail, how she'd continued her presentation knowing her assistant was dying down the hall, how she'd shown no concern when informed of the medical emergency, how she'd asked them to wait while the situation was handled. After 3 hours, we'd presented everything. The board chair called for a break, and we filed out into the hallway. Agatha's team huddled in the corner, whispering urgently. She stood apart from them, typing furiously on her phone. During the break, 2 current employees approached us. They'd been sitting in the lobby, working up courage. Both were pregnant and had their own stories about Agatha's treatment. The board chair agreed to let them speak when we reconvened. Agatha's defense when it came was predictable. Her lead attorney claimed we were disgruntled former employees seeking financial gain. He suggested I'd exaggerated my medical condition and made my own choice to come to work. He portrayed Agatha as a demanding but fair leader who held everyone to high standards. But their argument crumbled when the board asked specific questions. Why had the security footage been deleted? Why were there so many similar complaints spanning 15 years? Why had no pregnant employee ever been promoted under Agatha's leadership? Agatha finally spoke, her voice controlled but with an edge of desperation. She claimed she'd always supported her employees, that these were misunderstandings blown out of proportion. She pointed to the maternity leave policy she'd implemented, ignoring that it came after my near-death experience. The current employee's testimony destroyed what remained of her defense. One described being told her pregnancy was poor timing during a crucial project. The other had emails where Agatha questioned whether mothers could maintain the necessary commitment to succeed at Geraldine Marketing. As the meeting stretched into its 5th hour, the board chair announced they'd heard enough. They would deliberate privately and inform all parties of their decision within 48 hours. As we filed out, I caught Agatha's eye. The mask had finally slipped. I saw fear there. The next 2 days were agony. Agatha's harassment campaign intensified. Catherine received dozens of spam calls hourly. Roberta found her professional social media accounts hacked. I discovered someone had tried to access my medical records at the hospital, but something had shifted in our favor. Current Geraldine Marketing employees began reaching out, sharing their own experiences. A group of male employees sent a letter to the board supporting us, describing the toxic culture they'd witnessed. Clients called asking about the allegations, threatening to pull contracts if they were true. Tuesday night, the assistant who'd first helped us called Catherine in tears. She'd been fired that afternoon, accused of stealing company property. The emails she'd forwarded to us, but she'd expected this and had already lined up another job. She said it was worth it to finally see Agatha face consequences. Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., the board's decision arrived via email. My hands trembled as I opened it, my husband reading over my shoulder. The first paragraph was formal language about their investigation process. The second made my heart race. The board had found substantial evidence of systematic discrimination and gross misconduct by Agatha Geraldine. Effective immediately, she was terminated as CEO and barred from any leadership role in the company. They were implementing mandatory sensitivity training, revising all policies, and establishing an independent ombudsman for employee complaints. But they went further. The board announced a compensation fund for affected employees, with payments based on documented harm. They offered to reinstate any woman who'd been forced out due to pregnancy discrimination. Most importantly, they apologized, genuinely and specifically, for failing to protect their employees. My phone exploded with messages from the other women. Catherine was crying with relief. Roberta's employer had already called to apologize for doubting her. Maria sent a simple simple message: you did it. Within an hour, Agatha's name was scrubbed from the company website. Her parking space was empty when Catherine drove by to check. The PR firm dropped her as a client, and the crisis management team disappeared. Industry newsletters were already picking up the story, focusing on the board's swift action rather than Agatha's denials. That afternoon, we received another email from the board. They wanted to meet with each of us individually to discuss compensation and gather more information for potential criminal referrals. The Attorney General's office had expressed interest in investigating potential fraud related to the deleted security footage, but Agatha wasn't finished. That evening, she sent a mass email to her industry contacts, claiming she'd been forced out by a conspiracy of bitter former employees. She announced plans to start her own consulting firm and implied she had dirt on several board members that would come out in due time. The response was immediate and brutal. Recipients forwarded her email to us and the board. Several prominent industry leaders publicly distanced themselves from her. A major business publication ran a story titled "The Fall of Agatha Geraldine, a Cautionary Tale of Toxic Leadership." Thursday brought more vindication. The Labor Board announced a formal investigation into Geraldine Marketing's past practices. The timing of these anonymous board members suddenly developing consciences feels awfully convenient. Where was all this concern during the years of complaints? This whole careful choreography of the meeting, with Agatha's lawyers staying quiet until their turn, seems almost too orderly for such a messy situation. 3 major clients publicly praised the board's action and renewed their contracts. The company's stock price, which had plummeted Monday, began to recover. Catherine and I met with the board member who'd first listened to us. She revealed that they'd been monitoring Agatha's behavior for months, but needed concrete evidence to act. Our confrontation at the award ceremony had been the catalyst they'd been waiting for. She thanked us for our courage. By Friday, Agatha's attempted comeback had failed spectacularly. Her new consulting firm's website was flooded with negative reviews from our supporters. Industry associations revoked her speaking engagements. The Women's Empowerment Leader Award was formally rescinded, with the organization issuing an apology for not properly vetting recipients. The individual compensation meetings began the following week. The board had hired an independent mediator to ensure fairness. They reviewed medical records, lost wages, and emotional distress. The amounts weren't life-changing, but they represented real acknowledgement of what we'd endured. I met with them Tuesday afternoon. They'd reviewed everything: the hospital records, the hysterectomy report, the therapy bills my insurance hadn't covered. They asked about my daughter, the one I'd lost that day. For the first time in 2 years, I felt truly heard by someone in power. The compensation offer was more than I'd expected, enough to cover my medical debt and provide some security as I figured out my next steps. But more importantly, they offered something else: a formal apology letter acknowledging that the company's negligence had cost me my ability to have children. Other women received similar acknowledgments. Catherine was offered her job back with a promotion and back pay. Roberta received compensation for lost wages and damage to her professional reputation. Even women who'd left years earlier were tracked down and offered settlements. Maria's situation was particularly moving. The board not only compensated her for the trauma of finding me, but also ensured her cleaning company received a long-term contract with significant raises for all employees. They recognized that she'd shown more humanity that day than anyone in leadership. Meanwhile, Agatha's situation continued to deteriorate. Her husband filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Former employees from her previous companies came forward with similar stories. A prominent business ethics professor used her case as an example of how not to lead. The real satisfaction came in small moments. A current employee sent me a photo of the bathroom where I'd lost my daughter. It now had a plaque honoring the women whose suffering led to change. The company implemented paid pregnancy leave that started whenever an employee needed it, no questions asked. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Agatha made one last desperate attempt. She showed up at Catherine's apartment, demanding she recant her statements. Catherine recorded the entire interaction on her phone. Agatha offering money, then threatening lawsuits, finally breaking down and admitting she'd made mistakes but didn't deserve this. We turned the recording over to the authorities. Agatha was arrested for harassment and witness intimidation. Her mugshot showed a woman completely different from the polished executive who'd stood on that stage just a month earlier. Her carefully constructed image had crumbled entirely. The industry transformation was remarkable. Other companies began reviewing their policies, terrified of becoming the next Geraldine Marketing. Women who'd suffered in silence at other firms found courage to speak up. Business schools added case studies about our situation to their ethics curricula. 6 weeks after the confrontation, we held a dinner to celebrate. 28 women gathered at a restaurant downtown, sharing stories of healing and hope. Some had new jobs, others were starting their own businesses. The trauma bonded us, but we were determined to define ourselves by our strength, not our suffering. I sat between Catherine and Maria, watching these incredible women laugh and plan futures that had seemed impossible just months earlier. My husband held my hand under the table, proud of what we'd accomplished. I thought about my daughter, the one I'd lost on that bathroom floor. She'd never have justice in the traditional sense, but her short existence had sparked change that would protect countless others. Agatha's consulting firm folded within 2 months. Her professional reputation was destroyed, her network evaporated. The last I heard, she'd moved to another state, working in a non-management role at a small company that didn't Google their applicants thoroughly enough. But this story isn't really about Agatha's downfall. It's about 28 women who refused to let their trauma be buried in shredded documents and deleted footage. It's about Maria, who spoke up despite her fear. It's about Catherine, who organized us when we felt powerless. It's about every woman who stood in that ballroom and said, enough. The company that emerged from the ashes of Agatha's regime became a model for supporting working mothers. They partnered with women's health organizations, implemented flexible work arrangements, and created a culture where pregnancy was celebrated, not punished. The board member who'd listened to us became CEO, bringing a radically different leadership style. I never got to hold my daughter, never got to name shame her or watch her grow. That loss will always be with me. But in speaking her truth, in refusing to let her death be forgotten, we'd created a legacy she would have been proud of. Every woman who could now safely take time off for morning sickness, every mother who didn't have to choose between her baby and her job, they were all part of her story. The last time I saw Agatha was at an industry conference 8 months later. She was working a vendor booth for the small company that had hired her, looking older and worn. Our eyes met across the convention floor. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old arrogance, but it quickly faded to something else. Recognition, perhaps, of what her choices had cost everyone, including herself. I walked past without acknowledging her. I had a panel to moderate about creating inclusive workplaces for mothers. Catherine was presenting alongside me, and Maria would be in the audience, proud of how far we'd all come. We had work to do, changes to implement, women to support. That night, I told my husband I was ready to consider adoption. The family we'd dreamed of might look different than we'd planned, but it would be built on the same love. He cried and held me close. Healing wasn't linear, but we were moving forward. The next morning brought chaos. Agatha had spent the night orchestrating her counterattack. Catherine woke to find her apartment building's management office flooded with complaints about noise, suspicious activity, and lease violations. Her neighbors received anonymous letters warning them about the dangerous activist living among them. I discovered someone had called my husband's workplace, claiming to be verifying employment but asking pointed questions about his character and our financial situation. The caller mentioned my name specifically, wondering if my mental health issues affected his work performance. By noon, the pattern was clear. Every woman who'd spoken at the board meeting faced similar harassment. Roberta's children's school received anonymous tips about her unstable behavior. Maria's cleaning company lost 2 contracts after clients received calls questioning her reliability. The assistant who'd helped us found her car vandalized in broad daylight. Catherine organized an emergency meeting at a community center across town. 15 women showed up, all reporting similar experiences. The attorney joined us by video call, documenting each incident. She recognized the tactics immediately. Agatha was trying to make our lives so miserable we'd withdraw our complaints. The board's decision arrived that afternoon, earlier than expected. My phone buzzed with the email notification while Catherine was describing her landlord's sudden hostility. We gathered around my phone as I opened it, barely breathing. The board had accelerated their timeline due to ongoing concerns about retaliation. Their investigation confirmed systematic discrimination under Agatha's leadership. Her termination was effective immediately, with security already escorting her from the building. They'd frozen her company accounts pending review of potential financial misconduct related to covering up incidents. But Agatha had anticipated this. Within an hour, she'd sent a company-wide email from her personal account, claiming the board had orchestrated a coup. She accused specific board members of embezzlement, attached what she called evidence, and urged employees to resist the hostile takeover. The email ended with her announcing she'd already filed wrongful termination paperwork. The response was swift. The board's attorney sent cease and desist orders. The IT department blocked her email access. Security footage showed her being removed from the building, clutching boxes of documents she'd tried to take. But the damage was done. Several employees believed her claims, creating chaos within the company. That evening, Catherine received a hand-delivered envelope. Inside were photos of her entering and leaving her apartment, timestamps showing weeks of surveillance. A note read simply, "I know everything about you." Similar packages arrived at other women's homes. Agatha had hired private investigators before the board meeting, gathering ammunition for her war. The intimidation escalated over the next 3 days. Roberta's employer received forged emails appearing to be from her, containing racist remarks. I found my medical records posted on an anonymous blog with commentary about my attention-seeking behavior. 2 women discovered their credit reports had been accessed multiple times by unknown parties, but we'd learned from our experience. This time, we documented everything immediately. The attorney helped us file police reports for harassment. We installed security cameras, changed our routines, and watched out for each other. When Agatha's investigators showed up at Maria's workplace, 3 of us were there to witness and record their questions. Thursday brought an unexpected ally. Agatha's former personal assistant from 5 years ago reached out to Catherine. She'd left after becoming pregnant and facing similar treatment. She had recordings, actual audio files of Agatha discussing how to manage out pregnant employees without leaving a paper trail. She'd kept them all these years, too frightened to use them. The recordings were damning. Agatha's voice, clear and cold, explaining how to document performance issues that didn't exist, how to make pregnant women's lives difficult enough they'd quit voluntarily, how to ensure nothing could be traced back to discrimination. She even laughed about one woman who'd miscarried, calling it convenient timing. We turned everything over to the labor board investigator who'd been assigned our case. She listened to the recordings with growing disgust. Combined with our evidence, she had enough to expand the investigation beyond Geraldine Marketing to Agatha's previous companies. The pattern of abuse stretched back 2 decades. Friday afternoon, Agatha made her biggest mistake yet. She showed up at the company's main entrance, demanding to be let in. When security refused, she tried to force her way past them. The altercation was caught on multiple cameras. Agatha screaming, throwing her purse at a guard, claiming the building was rightfully hers. Police arrived within minutes. Her arrest made the business news. Not national coverage, just local business publications and industry newsletters. But for someone who'd built her career on image, it was devastating. The mugshot showed her designer suit disheveled, her perfect hair in disarray, her face twisted with rage. The mask had finally slipped completely. The weekend brought a brief respite. We met at Catherine's apartment. She'd decided to move anyway, tired of the hostile environment Agatha had created. As we packed her things, we shared stories of small victories. Maria's cleaning company had gained 3 new contracts from businesses impressed by her courage. Roberta's employer had traced the forged emails to Agatha's IP address and given her a raise for enduring the harassment. Monday morning, the labor board announced preliminary findings. Geraldine Marketing would face significant fines for systematic discrimination. They mandated extensive comprehensive reforms, including external oversight of all employment decisions involving pregnant women or new mothers. The board also referred criminal charges to the district attorney for the destruction of evidence. Agatha's response came through her lawyer, a rambling statement accusing everyone from the board to the janitors of conspiracy. She claimed to have evidence of widespread corruption, but provided nothing concrete. The statement was so unhinged that her own attorney withdrew from representation the next day. The individual settlement meetings began that week. I met with a mediator Wednesday afternoon. She'd reviewed everything: the hospital records, the hysterectomy report, the therapy bills. The company offered compensation for medical expenses, lost wages, and pain and suffering. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to provide closure and financial stability. More importantly, they offered something money couldn't buy: a formal acknowledgement of responsibility. The letter, signed by every board member, admitted the company's failure had cost me my ability to have children. They promised reforms to ensure no woman would ever face that choice again. I cried reading it, finally seeing my daughter's death acknowledged officially. Other women received similar settlements. Catherine got back pay for the promotion she'd been denied while pregnant. Roberta received compensation for the contracts she'd lost due to Agatha's retaliation. Even women who'd left years earlier were tracked down and offered settlements. The total cost to the company was substantial but not catastrophic. Justice within realistic bounds. Agatha's criminal case proceeded quietly. No media circus, no dramatic trial, just a broken woman facing consequences for destroying evidence and witness intimidation. She pled guilty to avoid jail time, receiving probation and community service. The judge ordered her to pay restitution to the women she'd harassed after her termination. The real victory came in smaller moments. Geraldine Marketing implemented the promised reforms. They hired a diversity officer who actually had power. They created anonymous reporting systems for discrimination. They mandated that no single person could make employment decisions about pregnant workers. The culture shifted slowly but genuinely. 3 months after the confrontation, we held our celebration dinner. 28 women gathered at a local restaurant. No media present, just us and our supporters. We'd won, but it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Several women still struggled with trauma. Some had changed careers entirely, unable to return to marketing. The scars remained. I sat with my husband, watching these remarkable women share their plans. Some were returning to Geraldine Marketing under new leadership. Others were starting fresh elsewhere. Maria's daughter had decided to study law, inspired by our fight. Catherine was launching a consulting firm focused on workplace equity. Not a massive venture, just her and 2 partners, building something meaningful. Agatha faded into obscurity. No dramatic downfall, no public humiliation beyond that single mugshot. She moved to another state, working in a non-management role at a small firm. I heard through former colleagues that she kept her head down, did her work, and went home. The empire she'd built on others' suffering had crumbled, leaving her with nothing but the consequences of her choices. The industry changed gradually. Other companies reviewed their policies, not from fear of lawsuits, but from genuine recognition that supporting working mothers was good business. Women felt safer speaking up about discrimination. It wasn't a revolution, just a slow shift toward basic human decency. 6 months later, I returned to Geraldine Marketing for a memorial dedication. They'd renovated the bathroom where I'd lost my daughter, creating a small wellness room for employees who needed privacy during medical situations. A simple plaque read, "In memory of those we failed to protect, and in commitment to those we must." My husband and I had started the adoption process, not because our story had a happy ending that demanded a baby, but because we were ready to love a child who needed parents. The grief would always be there, but it no longer defined us. We'd found purpose in pain, community in conflict, and justice in persistence. The last time I thought about Agatha was a year later, when the Labor Board published their final report. Buried on page 47 was a statistic. Workplace discrimination complaints had dropped 30% in our region since our case, not because discrimination ended, but because women felt empowered to address it early. My daughter never got to change the world, but her story had changed our corner of it. I closed the report and went back to my life. A normal life, with a normal job, in a normal community. We'd fought a monster and won, not through dramatic confrontations or legal battles, but through persistence, documentation, and refusing to be silenced. It wasn't a story for the movies. It was better. It was real. It was ours, and it was enough. That evening, I helped my husband prepare the spare room. The adoption agency had approved our application. Soon, a child who needed love would find it here. Not a replacement for what we'd lost, but a new chapter built on the foundations of our pain and perseverance. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, but no longer dark. The other women moved forward too. Catherine's consulting firm helped 3 small businesses improve their maternity policies. Roberta returned to school, studying human resources. Maria's daughter graduated with honors, heading to law school with a scholarship. We stayed in touch through a group chat, sharing victories and setbacks, bound by trauma, but not defined by it. Justice had come not through grand gestures, but through small, steady steps. A company reformed, a predator stopped, women protected, lives rebuilt. It would never make headlines or inspire documentaries. It was simply 28 women who'd refused to let their pain be buried in shredded documents and deleted footage. We'd stood up, spoken out, and slowly, carefully, changed our small piece of the world. The adoption finalized on a Tuesday afternoon. As we left the courthouse with our daughter, I thought about the one I'd lost. Her brief existence had sparked this journey, led to this moment. She'd never know her sister, but her legacy lived in every woman who could now safely say, "I need to go to the hospital," without fear of losing her job. That was enough. That was everything. Thanks for reading this story with me. It definitely kept me wondering about people's true motivations. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one.